Comment 797 is a famous thing about inequalities. Inequalities are basically solved with red dudes. I mean, it doesn't always work. Here's an example of an inequality that can't be solved with red dudes no matter how much you try. The basic method for solving that is just to muck around, try some values, and you'll eventually get a sense of which values work and which don't. But most inequalities can be solved with red dudes. You just do your thing, continuing to copy down the expressions. Now sometimes we do recommend alternative methods. So for example, if it's a quadratic inequality, we do not recommend red dudes. We instead recommend drawing a graph, and sometimes it's smart in a situation of immense complexity where the chances of error are high to replace the inequality symbol with a equal symbol, then do your thing, and then pray you remember to go back and interpret the answer in the correct context. But in general, you can solve inequalities with red dudes. There is, however, a famous trap, and that's what comment 797 says. It basically says that if your red dude is a timesing or a dividing, and it's timesing or dividing by a negative number, then you have to switch the direction of an inequality. So if it was 10x is greater than 5, it would now become negative 50x is less than negative 25x. I mean, that's a strange example where I made it more complicated rather than less. If it was negative 2x is less than or equal to 10, and I was dividing both sides by negative 2, then it becomes negative 5 on the right, 1x on the left, and the direction of this switches. Don't switch both. If you switch that and then you reverse these, you will have got back to where you started from. Also, don't think that you need to do this simply because there's negatives on the page. If you divide both sides by 10 here, because you're not dividing by a negative, you do not need to switch the direction of the inequality. And finally, just be aware that all this applies even when what you're timesing by is an algebraic expression. So 8 over x is greater than 2. If you times by x, you're on dangerous ground, because you can't be sure unless the context of the question enables you to be sure. You can't be sure whether x is positive or negative. The whole point of algebra is that it enables us to talk about all examples at once. So x might be negative 3, it might be 10, it might be 0. So therefore it's a dangerous situation to multiply both sides by x in this case. What we often recommend is to multiply both sides by x squared, because then you can be sure that that's positive. It leads to a bit of complexity, but that's okay. You just get a quadratic inequality which you solve with a graph. But that's a matter for year 12s, not anybody younger.